Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Atkinson, you state in your testimony that, and I quote, China is still largely a technologically developing nation, forcing companies from developed nations to transfer their technology, and that is as a faster way to innovation success than engaging in the hard work to move up the technology learning curve, as European and American companies have had to do. In your opinion, why is it that American firms are so quick to give away their technology inherited through generations of innovators and a federal investment when there are so many examples that the Chinese will just use this technology to compete not only in China, but also in other global markets and in America, as in your example of high-speed rail?
Thank you. I think there are two reasons. One is it's not just American firms. In the high-speed rail case, I think, is a classic where Kawasaki transferred high-speed rail technology to the Japanese as a condition of them being able to sell them equipment for the largest high-speed rail system in the world. And then a few years later, the Chinese state-owned enterprise started to outcompete them in third-party markets. So even countries where the firms have a longer-term horizon, they get forced to do this because they're faced with a Hobson's choice. They either do this or they're left out of the market completely. So that's why I think joint action is so important. But I do think the second reason is that American companies are under much shorter time horizon pressures to show returns because of the way our equity markets are structured. And so they oftentimes don't have the ability to, or the patience to say, well, you know what, we're not going to do this because we know in 10 years it's going to be a problem. It's going to help us right now, but in 10 years it's going to be a problem. I think the way equity markets are structured in other countries, that sometimes gives other companies more leeway.
Thank you. And the United States government has invested heavily in promoting electric vehicles. And as you note in your testimony, Dr. Atkinson, the Chinese government precluded the Chevy Volt from qualifying for alternative fuel vehicle subsidies unless GM agreed to transfer their engineering secrets to a joint venture in China. However, GM did not let this deter them from entering this market. They conducted a separate agreement to transfer battery and other electric car technology to a Chinese joint venture. So while I agree that China should be opposed in the policies they are currently pursuing to gain advantage, how can we encourage a new firm culture that would more aggressively protect American ingenuity and innovation, and do firms bear no social responsibility for the consequences of their conduct?
Well, what I would worry about is if we somehow said to U.S. companies, you can't transfer any technology under duress to China, and somehow we could pass a rule or a law to that effect. My worry would be that it would just simply give foreign competitors the competitive advantage. I mean, we see this, for example, in the competition between Airbus and Boeing. China is the largest growing aviation passenger market in the world, jet market in the world. And if you're not in that market as either Boeing or Airbus, you're in tough shape. Now, if we were to, for example, say to Boeing, you can't help Comac, their state-owned enterprise, you can't help them, you can't do anything, they're just going to basically say, okay, we're going to get everything and we'll pressure Airbus. So I think, again, I go back to this. I think that that's where we have to basically go with the Japanese, who are facing this exact same problem, and the Europeans, and we have to all act collectively. Because you're right, Mr. Tonko, it is not in the interest of U.S. companies to do this, but it's very, very hard for them to resist this.
And finally, if either of you could make recommendations from the federal government perspective, and I know that Mr. Shea offered some comments, but are there any within the programs of agencies that we oversee, such as NIST or DOE or NSF or NASA? Is there anything you would recommend in association with those given agencies?
I haven't thought extensively about that, but just a couple of quick thoughts. One, you could require that those agencies who are funding technology projects monitor the use of those technologies and where they end up being commercialized as a first step, which we don't do. So again, it's not to say that I would not put a hard ban on anything. There are real reasons why you might want to go and commercialize something in Canada, for example, but we at least ought to know exactly what's going on with these when we're transferring or helping firms with federally supported R&D help.
Mr. Shea, any thoughts?
Well, you know, NASA was the subject. The Jet Propulsion Laboratory was subject of a major hacking attempt. I would make sure that NASA reported to you whether there was any dissipation of technology as a result of that hacking. One thing that this is not related to those specific agencies, sir, but this antitrust exemption is something that we recommended in 2010. That Congress explore that with respect to the airplane industry. We looked at the offset requirements being imposed on airplane manufacturers to come in. If you want to sell airplanes to China, you got to build facilities here in China. And we thought maybe the major companies should get together and collectively resist these efforts, and that may require an antitrust exemption. So that should be looked at.
Thank you very much.